I used to, oh my God, if I just think about some of the stuff, it was crazy. I used to go to bed thinking about all the calories that I would consume the following day.
Wow.
And if I woke up the following morning with my ribs sore, that was a good thing.
No way.
Because it meant that my ribs had been pressing into my bed, and that was a good thing. It was mental.
Wow.
Like, it was crazy. And that was a success if I hurt.
Melissa Matson, welcome to the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. Delighted to have you on the show. We've been friends for a few months and we recently had an amazing trip to Kilimanjaro, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
That is one word for it. Amazing. Yeah, there are many others that come to mind as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. For those that don't know you, what do you do?
So I am a brand strategist, first and foremost. I am the founder of Ember Brand Agency, and we really work with a clientele of passionate entrepreneurs. So we don't tend to focus on specific niches, but the passion, the desire to grow, the ambitious ones is what we like to say. We work with those clients and help them get from where they are today to where they want to be tomorrow.
I really want to delve into that later into the show because there's a lot of, maybe we can do a little bit now, there's a lot of personal branding stuff going on LinkedIn. There's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of influencers out there. But I guess whilst we're on the subject, what makes your brand and you different? Because you talk about DNA, you talk about purpose, you talk about inside out. I want to know more about that.
I love the fact you remembered that. That is a good start. Yeah. So we build brands from the inside out, I always like to say. So a lot of brand agencies will very much focus on the visuals. So what things look like, the aesthetic, and all that stuff really matters. The problem is that has a shelf life because trends change. You might fall out of love with some colours. So it's very much a short-term mentality. What we like to do is build brands from the inside out, which very much focuses on the brand foundations, the brand strategy.
Yeah.
In addition to the founders, the founding teams, the people who set the business up in the first place. They're the people with that fire, that passion, and it's that we work with to then build the brand externally. So we start from the inside with all of the foundation.
Yeah.
And then we make the pretty things happen afterwards.
Because I think a lot of business owners and people, entrepreneurs who own a business, they think they understand the importance of brand, but I think you take it to another level. And I think what you're trying to touch on there is that it's really finding that fuel, that passion, that fire, isn't it? To get not just their audience or their customers excited, but actually the owners themselves excited about it.
Yeah, because when you'll see the difference between two business owners, one where it is their baby, their heart, their passion, they literally live and breathe what they do and why they do it. When you have that purpose behind your business and your brand, everything else then becomes easy because your marketing is really clear. You know what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're different, why anyone else should care. But also your sales become easy because you have become magnetic. Yeah. And I think it's that passion, the fire that we talk about with Ember, that really leads into this magnetism. When you're magnetic, it's not that difficult to stand out because you radiate this energy and this purpose that people want to be a part of. They want to be a part of that tribe.
But I feel like you are actually creating a feeling in somebody. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah, I'm a qualified coach and NLP practitioner as well. So I think for me personally, I like to dig, a bit like you, dig a little bit deeper into the person behind the brand.
Yeah.
When you do that and you really start to tap into their purpose, the reason why they choose to do this over anything else, when you can tap into that at a much deeper level than just, I'm here to make money, or I like to help other people, or something really surface level. When you actually understand the person, that then translates so much more powerfully in a brand.
Yeah.
And everything else then becomes clearer.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that's why I got you on the show. I've asked you what you do. Now we want to know who you are. So who is Melissa Matson, would you say?
Oh my goodness me, where do I start? I am someone who is, and I think if I do this exercise with my clients sometimes, especially when you're talking personal brand, describe your brand in 3 words. So if someone's described me, I'd probably ask you this. How would you describe me? But if someone was to describe me, generally they say fiercely passionate, high energy, caring, like I really care about the people I work with and what I do and anyone around me. I'm a mom, I live for my kids. I'm a mom and I just always want to live and do things that light me up. There's a reason that we've chosen Emma as the name of our business.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very purpose, passion driven.
So, but where does that stem from, though?
As a kid, I've always done creative things. So, like, as a child, I did a lot of performing and dancing and singing, and just always loved that feeling of being of joy. You know, that when you are free with no external influence and you're just who you are as a child. I think whoever you are as a child is a really good indicator of your true essence. And as a child, I was really kind of bubbly and performing and just loved doing all of that kind of stuff. So it very, very much comes from that. Had a bit of a squiggly line journey to get back to where I'm in this place. But I think, it's very much who I am at my core. And I think the reason now I feel so aligned in what I'm doing is because I found that piece of me that was always there, but I'm now doing it. Does that make sense? You know, you're living and breathing what you should be doing. And
it's like
I genuinely enjoy what I do every single day.
I got to know you quite well, very well, on that big mountain of ours that we climbed, and I want to talk about that experience as well. But let's talk about this squiggly journey then. Talk us through since school to where you are now. Squiggly
line. I like that. Someone said that ages ago. I was like, you've got a really squiggly line. I'm like, yeah, I have. But I think our journeys, I was literally saying to the taxi driver here, our journeys give us colour. They give us context and experience. And actually, I'm really grateful for what's brought me here. But it's, oh my goodness, where do I even begin? I was like really creative at school. But also fiercely academic. So I went to a very academic school where everything was about grades. So I was what you would probably call a straight A student. I ticked all the boxes. I played by the rules. I did what you're meant to do. But because of that, I think I ended up going into a path that I thought I should versus what I really wanted to, what was really aligned with me. To give you an example, so my work experience when I was 16 was at radio presenting. So I was qualified BBC radio presenter. I applied to London Film School when I was 17, always being very like creative. But at the same time, I went to an academic school where they were like, let's get your proper grades. So the choices really, in my eyes at that time, was doctor or lawyer. I hate blood. So I became a lawyer. So then I went to uni and studied law, hated every second of it. But I was a high achiever. So it's like what we did, despite wanting to do something really creative. So I think I ended up kind of following this path of, like what I should do, not necessarily what I wanted to do. And that kind of took me through my 20s trying to figure out where I fit, because it wasn't quite right. But whilst I was at uni studying law, realised I didn't want to practice, didn't want to be a barrister, did many pupilages, wasn't for me. So I got myself a mentor who was at the time, she was marketing director of Debenhams, of Asda. So I worked and shadowed her for about 2-3 years on and off whilst I was at uni. And it was amazing. I got to work in London. I went to work in all the board meetings of these really big brands. And I loved it. I literally loved the idea of being really senior and being a boss, and the idea of big brands and making real impact. So after uni, I followed her footsteps and joined the Mars grad scheme. So sales development grad scheme at Mars. Spent a couple of years at Mars, went on to Starbucks, another big brand. Business development, marketing. Had my own brand agency about 8 years ago as well. Marketing director of Mars came to me and was like, do you want to do your brand agency? Always been entrepreneurial, always had a million businesses on the side. And I was like, yeah, why not? So quit Starbucks to start a startup 8 years ago. And that business went really well. We worked 7 days a week till about 2 a.m. every morning. It was absolutely crazy, but a great experience. And I really started to understand at that time how to build brands properly. Went back into the corporate world when I built a house.
As you do? You built a house.
Built a house, had 2 babies at the same time. Do not recommend it.
No? Wow.
It was absolutely mental. So went back into corporate for a bit whilst that kind of was going on. And then, it was a case of crossroads in your life. Do I want to go back into corporate 5 days a week selling my soul, or do I want to actually do what I love and work doing my own thing. And another passion of mine is personal development, obsessed with growth.
Yeah.
And qualified as a coach.
I mean,
went into business coaching.
As you do. I mean, you've got more of the journey to explain there, but it's very obvious you're passionate and you're very determined to kind of be the top of your game, big brands, big corporate success. But where does this kind of come from? What was it your parents that instilled this into you, or is it are you a self-made resilient person, or?
In terms of parents, not at all.
Oh, okay.
So my mum was a stay-at-home mum. My dad still is fruit and veg wholesaler.
Right.
So work ethic was definitely there with him, because he worked, as I was growing up, 6 days a week. He gets up at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Every morning.
Yeah.
Goes to drives over to his work, which is like an hour away, does a full day work, comes back mid-afternoon, has a couple of hours nap, gets up. He used to do the bath time, bedtime every night with my mom, and then he'd go to bed about 8 p.m.
Very traditional kind
of. 6 days a week.
Right. Okay.
And just worked from being 18 up until now as a fruit and veg wholesaler. Like, that's all he does. That he's a grafter. Like, that work ethic, always been there. In terms of high achieving and pushing you, it's never been that like them. They always just want me to be happy.
Yeah.
I think for me, it came from, we weren't poor, but we weren't mega affluent. So we didn't go abroad on holiday or anything like that. But it was always a topic of conversation, I think, in the house, have money and I was just aware that we made choices. We never went without, but my mum and dad made choices. And I remember thinking when I was younger, as I'm the eldest of 4 kids, and I always remember thinking, I'm the one that's going to have to look after everybody, always. So I remember even my first graduate conversation, in the interviews and things like that, they're like, where'd you drive from? I remember at 18 saying, one day I'm going to have to look after my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And that was always there.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big driver in the early years.
So, I mean, that resonates for me because on Kilimanjaro on day 3, you were there for me in a massive way. I had that altitude sickness. I was in bits.
You were poorly.
And you were running around. And I was thinking on the train on the way here, it sort of almost brought a tear to my eye about how just kind of caring you were to me. And it really struck me. And then I was thinking about you and your this podcast, and you definitely put others first, but what about you? Who cares for you, and how do you care about what about the self-love piece? What about yourself? Because you talk about business, you talk about business a lot in this podcast already. What about you as a person? How do you look after yourself, and who looks after you?
That is a great question. I think I have learned over the years to actually be really kind to myself. So I think I come across as quite strong now because that is very much a learned behaviour. So when I was 16 to 21, let's say, thereabouts, I had an eating disorder and I was really very, very poorly. Right. And it took over my whole life. So I was the exact opposite of self-care. Absolute,
What was the eating disorder?
Anorexia.
Okay.
And I was really poorly with it. How I was then able to still be A-star grades is it was my coping mechanism. So I was very in a controlling environment with school and uni and stuff. It was the way I coped. So it's the exact opposite of self-care. And I think over the years of recovery, and I'm totally out the other side now, and actually to the other extreme where I bloody love food and drink and having a good time. But that's come through hard work. So I think now, because I know what it's like to have something like that and struggle so much with that, where it affects everything, relationships, who you are, how you show up. It affects, even just how you operate on a day-to-day basis and the thoughts that you have every minute of every working day. Because I know how hard that is, I'm actually really kind to myself all the time now. That's come through a lot of therapy, a lot of self-awareness. It really sparked, I think, my obsession with the personal development piece and wanting to understand why. I get that.
Do you feel that the missing, not love, the missing kind of care that your parents may or may not have given you forced you into kind of doing it for yourself, would you say?
What do you mean?
Because you say that when I say that did your mum and your dad instill that drive and focus in you? And you said no, it was the opposite. It feels like you've done a lot of these things off your own back.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong, my mum and dad were the best. Like, I didn't have what you would call a traumatic childhood or anything like that. Like, they were super supportive. And I don't know where that drive comes from, other than to say I was always very aware of how I was perceived at school, and like always wanting to come across as not the best, but just accepted is more the word.
Okay.
And I think that's just part of it. But yeah, my parents were always like super loving and supportive, but not pushy, I think is probably what I'm more heading towards.
So talk to us then about, the times when, you haven't been this positive kind of resilient person, some dark times.
You are literally looking at the exact opposite of who I used to be. Whatever you see now is the exact opposite of what I was. Let's say 17, 18 years ago. So 20. So say if I was to think back to when I was 17, outwardly, I think people would assume like I appeared confident to a certain level.
Yeah.
I looked very poorly.
Right.
I was very, very thin.
So it's obvious you have some sort of eating disorder.
It peaked like over time. Sometimes it's better than others, recovery. And then there's a lot of like recovery and relapses, sort of cycles that go on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very, very thin. But I used to, oh my God, if I just think about some of the stuff, it was crazy. I used to go to bed thinking about all the calories that I would consume the following day.
Wow.
I would upset. And if I woke up the following morning with my ribs sore, that was a good thing.
No way.
Because it meant that my ribs had been pressing into my bed, and that was a good thing. It was mental.
Wow.
Like, it was crazy. And that was a success.
Yeah.
If I hurt.
Wow.
Stupid. It was, when I look back now, I'm like, that's crazy how someone so intelligent can have such backwards thought patterns and processing. Oh my God, I used to have so many arguments with my parents about food, because if you imagine your child, you're looking at them wasting away, all you want to do is help.
Yeah. Can you remember what might have caused you to act and feel like that then?
It's a difficult one. It's like with eating disorder, sometimes it's chicken and egg. What comes first, depression or eating? And my eating was very much about control.
Yeah.
I didn't feel in control of a situation. Objectively, there's no situation. It's just school and life and overwhelm and exams and just normal teenage stuff. And that was my way of controlling things.
Right.
I think part of it probably was, as a teenager, if you're thin, don't forget this was like 2000s. Yeah. It was all magazines and all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank God it wasn't social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was very much what you look like. So I think part of it was an acceptance. Started off being healthy eating and I'm just being healthy. I was really sporty and just looking after myself. And then it becomes slowly obsessive. And then it gets to the point where it's who you are. It becomes your identity.
Yeah.
So I can't think, and I've had a lot of therapy on this. I can't think about like a trigger as such, as in one incident.
Right.
But it was very much about feeling like I was in control of my life. This is one area that was.
What did you learn from that therapy then? How did you come out of that? Because not all therapy works actually, but some does.
No, and you know what? I'm not saying it was therapy that was the thing for me either. I think just generally with CBT and all these other therapies, neurolinguistic programming and everything, I think part of it is just understanding that you are not the thing.
Yes.
So whether it be an addiction or eating disorder is a form of addiction, you are not defined by that. That is not you as a person.
Right. Okay.
It is something that you are suffering as a mental illness.
That's really interesting because I think where people fall into the trap, like it becomes them, and they think that then they're that person, which leads to depression. I'm an addiction in myself, and that's a very depressive thought, isn't it? To have that.
And I think it's really, really important that people distinguish and differentiate between the illness and the person. And mine, I knew who I was. Like I said, as a kid, I was happy-go-lucky. I was performing. I was such a happy child. I'm very confident and bubbly. And then when I had the illness, I was a recluse. I didn't socialize because obviously wine has a lot of calories. And I became I played a role.
Yeah.
I very much played a role, and I did all the things that you should, but I was a shell. Like, I was struggling massively.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think therapy just made me realize and understand the difference between me and the thing. And actually, when you do that, it gives you so much power, because you realize, like, you're still a good person, but you can work on the thing, the issue, the illness, the problem, whatever it is. You can work on that and recover from that. And your soul is still you. You just got to find a way to bring it out. So I think that was really helpful. But for me, the therapy wasn't necessarily the solution. I remember really clearly what brought me out of it, which was at the end of university, I knew, in uni, I knew I wanted to be taken seriously. I was very ambitious, and I always have been really ambitious, and I care, and I wanted to have a good career and all that kind of stuff. And I remember looking in the mirror once and going, if you look like a 12-year-old, no one's going to take you seriously. And for me, it was such a turning point, because I remember thinking, I've been keeping myself as a child to keep myself safe. It was all about control. I was controlling everything to keep myself safe.
Okay, right,
and
right.
It wasn't a conscious thing. This was all subconscious. But
safe from what, though?
From the real world, I think. Safe from responsibility, safe from failure. Like,
wow.
I was good at school. I could tick the box at school. Like, I could play by those rules.
But you were scared of something. You're scared to.
I think it was not being good enough. Like, in the real world, I'm reading into it now, objectively 20 years later, but I think it was like subconsciously keeping myself small and just safe.
Well, that's a complete dichotomy, as you say, to what you're doing now. You're all about putting yourself out
Which
there.
is why I'm really passionate about unlocking the potential within people as well as brands.
Okay.
So I'm qualified now in NLP and breakthrough coaching. I'm really passionate about people. So whenever we work with anyone, it's never just about the brand.
No.
It's never about that, because brands come and go to a certain extent if you just do surface level stuff.
Yeah.
I genuinely care that person feels freaking amazing. Like, they feel lit up and literally energized by their story and why they're doing what they're doing.
I think where you win is because you've been there before yourself, so you utilize and harness that experience of fear and kind of worry and being too scared to be big. Yeah. And you can see it in your clients, can't you?
Yeah. But trust me, it's been a journey.
I know.
It's been a journey.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think it's made me so much stronger as a person now that actually I'm really grateful that happened. It was freaking horrific at the time.
Yeah, of course.
For my family and everyone around me as well. But it's made me so strong, so resilient. And actually, I really understand people. Yeah. Like, people generally.
So when you've taken off the amazing suit that you're wearing or whatever it is you're doing, and you're at home, or how
tracksuit bottoms and hoodie always.
I can picture it now. You say you're into personal development. I mean, I always think that it doesn't matter how great you are, if you're a coach or whatever, everyone's got mental health to a certain degree. Everyone's got their well-being stuff. And I think from time to time, sometimes you just need to sit there and accept your emotions. And so talk to us about the Melissa kind of outside of the social media, outside of work. What do you like?
I think I'm always very chatty and very passionate. I don't think that ever changes. You've seen me up a mountain with no makeup,
absolutely,
hair scraped back. I always say I'm a bit of a chameleon. Like, whatever environment I'm in, I kind of adapt, and I'm good with that. I actually like the fact that sometimes I'm in a jacket and high heels, and I feel really good doing that. But equally, I'm a dog mom. Every morning I walk my dog with my walking boots on. I'm a mom as well, and I'm very present in that. So I like the fact that I've got different kinds of parts of me, which is good. Yeah. I also like my quiet. Like, I like being on my own. Are
you quite an emotional person?
Yeah. Yes, I am. There's times and places. There are times and places. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel deeply.
Give us an example when you last felt deeply.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, I don't want to bring it back to Kilimanjaro, but the most recent time has been up that mountain.
Yeah.
And on the summit night, we had to walk, I think it was like 19 hours within 24 hours, like up vertical hill, basically, with no sleep. And I had zero left.
Yeah.
Like absolutely nothing left to give. I think at one point you were like, "Come on, you can do it, you can do it." And I was like, I can't. I just can't.
Absolutely.
And I think, I'm not saying I gave up because we obviously made it to the top, but that feeling of sheer exhaustion and not knowing where you're going to pull it from, I was pretty emotional then.
Yeah.
And then actually for me, coming down the bottom, at the very end, we had about 100 porters in bright orange T-shirts.
That's right.
Singing to us, and
amazing.
the pure joy was just overwhelming. And I think it was such an eye-opening experience because you get to see the very best in humanity without social media, without labels, or some people, I didn't even know what they did for a job, but there's no labels. And I think I was very humbled. I think I was very, very humbled by that. That was pretty intense.
What do you think the differences are between the old Melissa and the new Melissa then?
I was going to say self-belief, but that's not true. I always knew I'd be okay. I think a big lesson I had very, very early was no one cares about you.
It's true.
At all. And I used to think people were looking at me. I used to think people were like, "Oh my God, look at her," whispering and obsessing over what I look like. And genuinely, the most liberating thing is when you realize everyone's got their own shit going on. Yeah. Everyone's dealing with their own stories, their own journeys. Yeah. As soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, this is quite liberating. So now I don't actually care that much about what other people
I think that's such a refreshing attitude.
Say and do.
if I can relate that to kind of LinkedIn and social media, I used to, up until about 6 or 7 months ago, if I didn't post for a day or two, I'd be like, "Oh, what will my community think?" Like, actually, mate, you're not that important. Yeah. And no one cares. I think sometimes to relate it to kind of LinkedIn and social media, which I want to move on to now, I think that we can get so self-important about it.
No one cares. We're not that important. If we disappear for a week, the world still keeps turning. Everyone still goes on with their lives. And we can come back a week later and just carry on as you were. Like, it's okay to not have everybody on, like thinking everybody's on you all the time. I think it's okay to just be refreshingly anonymous sometimes as well.
Because even with yourself, because you would think it would go hand in hand that with what you're doing, likes, comments, of course, is important to you. But for me, I think you've spoken to me about you're not in it for that. You're in. Just explain that context.
I'm not in it for fame or likes or a number of followers. Everyone's different, and some people that is their metric and that is how they judge success. For me, that's not success. I'm here to make my clients have all of that, not me personally. And it's because I don't get any validation from that. Like, I don't judge my self-worth with a metric.
I think too many people do though.
They do. And I think this has been part of my journey. I genuinely know my self-worth now. 20 years ago, I really didn't. Now I really do. And I think that's such a powerful place to be, where obviously, like, everyone likes to have a post that goes viral or whatever, like validation you get from that. But my personal worth is not equated to the number of likes I get. It's so difficult
not to fall into that trap though, isn't it? In this day and age?
Yeah, of course it is. Because it's dopamine hit.
What advice would you give for people who are?
I think that starts from within. I mean, it's so much deeper than a number. I think anyone who gets a lot of validation from that needs to go and work on themselves and actually what is success. And sometimes people think success is that. For me, I know my measure of success, and I think this is really key. My measure of success is, from a business point of view, it's how many clients I have, what's my revenue, what's my profit margin. That's success from business, not the number of likes. So actually, if I've got a successful business, actually that might be 90% recommendation, constant coming back. I'm good with that. But actually on a personal level, my measure of success is happy kids, healthy kids, contentment, doing something I love. I wake up genuinely every day and I love what I do.
But I think you link that to your offering as well. And I think it comes out in what you say, what you post, you look to your website. I think it's very intrinsically, authentically value driven. Words like authenticity but they're banded around all the time. You are what you say you are.
Thank you. No, do you know, I take that as a massive compliment because for years I pretended to be something I wasn't. And actually there's another side of my story as well, which is post kids. I think a lot of moms will relate to this.
Yeah.
I lost who I was massively. My children are 13 months apart. Don't recommend
That's close.
It's very, very close. Very close.
Like waiting for a bus almost.
Yeah, like 13 months apart. So I had 2 years maternity leave essentially, like back to back.
Wow.
2 years out of my job and my identity.
So challenging for you.
It was incredibly difficult, as well as building a house at the same time. Like it was just nuts. But because of that, I really lost who I was, lost my identity, and I lost that fire. And I felt very, very confused and lonely. And I became this shadow of my former self. Having found my thing now, I feel like I've become a bit of, the butterfly that transforms.
Right.
And that's happened very recently. I'd say in the last 6 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
5-6 years. Even then, post kids, I was a shadow of my former self. So I think there's this constant, not reinvention, but this constant rebirth that I give myself permission as well to do that.
Yeah.
And I think so often people feel that they have to choose their career or they have to choose a certain path and that's who they are. I don't buy into that. I'm just a big believer in follow at the time what you feel is right and then lean into it.
So what's been your biggest lesson then so far?
Do what you love, not what you think you should. Or just because you can't doesn't mean to say you should. Just because you can.
Yeah.
Just because you can doesn't mean to say you should. Yeah. Because I was very good at, I could put my hand to a lot of different kind of things, which is part of my problem. I didn't really have a clear direction.
Yeah.
And I did what I thought I should, what people were guiding me towards.
Absolutely.
And I'm really passionate now about helping people to find their thing through business, through brand, through whatever, just conversations that have over a cup of tea and a piece of cake.
Yeah.
But unlocking that fire is a genuine learning for me. It's transformed my life.
Yeah.
And helping others to do the same is now like a bit of a life mission for me.
So that's amazing. So what do you look for in a client or in a friend or, in your social circle? What impresses you?
Oh, that's a good question. I like what impresses me. I keep repeating myself, but I like people who are passionate about something. Yeah. It could be stamp collecting. Right. It could be like craft beer. I genuinely don't care. As long as there's something that gets them out of bed in the morning that they could talk about. Yeah. I love that. I find that just so interesting and inspiring. Like I love being inspired. One of my values is growth. Okay. And I never want to be just samey forever. So anyone else who is constantly growing and developing and like it's just into like learning and living. I love that.
If you was to ask me what the difference it was between the old Chris and the new Chris, the old Chris would probably get quite upset, even angry and retaliate and react when shit happens.
Yes.
Nowadays, I'd like to think and say and believe that I'm much more calm, more measured and more responsive.
I've seen that recently from you.
Thank you. That's good to hear coming from you. That's good.
Yeah.
What about you though? What does make you angry?
Whoa, what makes me angry? I tend not to get too angry.
I've noticed that.
What gets me angry?
What pisses you off, perhaps?
Yeah, again, it's more aligned with the value piece. So I am very anti dishonesty or lies.
Yeah.
and this was why I went into the law side, because I used to want to be a barrister fighting for the little people versus the big corporates.
I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but as you say, it's quite a long-winded thing to get.
And I only wanted to be a barrister, and it's really quite challenging to go that route if you're not passionate enough, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
But no, I can't stand dishonesty or lies. Like, that's a bit of a hard line.
What happens to you when that happens?
Oh, when I go.
Oh, right.
No. I'm very good at fighting for my beliefs and like my value system.
Yeah.
So I do I can argue.
Sure.
I can really fight. But I think maybe it's because I'm a Libra. Like, I do see both sides of every argument. So I am quite like chilled and understanding. But if I think there's been wrongdoing or unfairness, I think is more the point. If there's been unfairness in anything, if someone's done something that I think is really unfair, I will absolutely stand up for myself.
Wow.
So that feeling of like right and wrong is quite strong in me.
Where do you feel that you talk about personal development? I love that. I think it's one of my attributes, and I think I always admire people that want to improve themselves. Where can you, for want of a better term, where do you think you can improve?
Oh my God, so many areas. I think I can get. My God, first one is I talk before I think. Like, I could definitely use a bit of a filter.
Okay.
I definitely speak quickly, and there's sometimes no like feedback loop, which sometimes get me into trouble. I mean, I can't think of anything top of my head, but I know that regularly happens. I think I've really worked on this in the last few years, but there's definitely still a fear of judgment. And potentially, I don't care about what people think. So I have said that, I get that.
Yeah.
But I think subconsciously, that fear of, not of failure. It's more failure, I think, than judgment.
Still there a little bit.
Still there. I think there is still that. Oh my God, there's so many things I think I sometimes struggle to take feedback because I can be quite defensive.
Okay.
I can be quite defensive, but I think that's because I've learnt to just protect myself a little bit.
Yeah.
So defensiveness comes out a little bit, but I think that's quite normal equally. I think everyone's a little bit.
Yeah.
Oof.
I mean,
I struggle with the feedback loop sometimes.
Wow. I'll take my hat off to you to kind of, how old are your kids now?
6 and 7.
I mean, they're young kids, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
And to kind of be a great mum and to set up a business and build out that. I mean, that's
an area I need a lot of work on.
What's the percentage of workaholic versus relaxaholic? It feels like it's 99-1.
No, do you know what? I'm really good, actually. Yeah, I am quite good at chilling. I think I've come the first, like I said, I've really struggled with the identity piece with motherhood, and I knew I was quite ambitious and stuff like that.
What do you mean? What do you mean? The difference between I need to be a mom versus need to be an entrepreneur?
Yes. Just or I need to do something for me,
right? Versus
be a mom, because I used to think I was going to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And because I love family, I'm from a big family. Always had a lot of noise around me, and I knew that was always going to be part of my journey.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd be like a stay-at-home mom and love it. And very, very quickly after, I had them close together, but I realised I needed something for me.
Sure.
But I still really want to be like that full-time mom in one part of my brain. But then at the other side, I know I'm so much better for being a better mom for doing the work.
Yeah, of course. Right.
But I do every day still struggle with getting that balance right. And I hate the word balance. There's no such thing as balance. It's a blend.
Absolutely agree.
It's a work-life blend.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a magic solution. I don't think I'm ever going to feel like it's right.
No.
But one thing I do know is they look up to me. They're 6 and 7 now, 2 little girls, and they look up to me and see mummy doing something she loves, and they're really proud. And I just know that they like see it as a good thing.
Yeah.
So I want them to feel that. I want them to look at me and go, I can do that too. One day, whatever that is.
So what does your family think then of what you're doing in general?
I don't think half of them understand it.
Often the case, isn't it? Right.
I don't think they get it.
Yeah.
They see me on social media and they're like, what do you do? They're always really proud. I think it's hilarious that I now speak on stages and I do a lot of guest speaking and talking and things like that, because I think it's come full circle from my performance days. And my mum always says, I knew you'd end up on a stage somewhere. We thought it'd be the West End. I used to want to be in the West End.
Yeah.
Nope, now it's just talking in front of business people. But she was like, I knew you'd get there one day in some capacity. But yeah, I think they're really proud. They don't understand it, but they don't need to. As long as I'm happy, they're happy. Especially given everything we've gone through.
Yeah.
I used to be very stressed, like a very stressy person. I used to overanalyze everything, second guess. I used to practice conversations before I had them. So like the idea of becoming a podcast, I'd have prepped, even though I didn't know the questions, I'd have prepped for 3 days
Which
prior.
makes it worse, isn't it, sometimes?
Oh my God. I used to, before every phone call, I used to write down what I was going to say in the phone call. I used to be all like that.
Okay.
And now I'm just sometimes too far the opposite. I'm a bit too laid back. I don't care as much.
Yeah.
But part of that's a protection mechanism. I don't want to be stressed again.
Yeah.
But they're just happy that I'm happy in that way.
Yeah.
Which is all you want for your kids.
I've had a very successful life, and I feel this is just the beginning for you, actually. You've got so much more to achieve, right?
Thanks. I mean, I feel like I'm still like just on the starting blocks, to be honest. I think I've said this to you before. I'm aiming for triple figures. I'm going to live till I'm well over 100.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
Relative to that, I'm just starting out. That's how I feel.
What would you change about your life, though, if anything?
I think I always wanted, I don't know if I'd change it, but I always wanted, the little gang of girlfriends.
Right, okay.
Like friendships. And that sounds awful.
Yeah.
But I've never had, because of my anorexia and stuff like that, I never had like groups of girlfriends. And I also moved around a lot.
You don't strike me as someone who would thrive in necessarily having too many friends, though.
No, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
But because I moved around for work and stuff, I think by the age I was 30, between 20 and 30, I think I lived in 11 different houses.
Wow. Right.
So I've travelled a lot, which means I didn't have roots really until I was in my 30s. And I look at my sister who's in the same house, or not same house, but same town, growing up in, family, like school friends. And sometimes I think that would be nice. But equally, I don't think I necessarily
Why do you think you haven't got? Okay.
I am a lot better now.
Yeah.
I think part of it was just travel, like just moving around a lot.
I put so much passion and energy into my business. I kind of like almost didn't have time or energy for that.
I used to work in Nottingham, but I lived in London, so I used to get up at 5 a.m. every morning, drive to Nottingham from London, which is the backwards way to commute.
Yeah.
And do that. Like I just my life in my 20s was very much about work. And wherever work put me, I moved, basically.
Yeah.
So
do you feel that there's an element of not wanting to get people too close to you, or am I off mark there?
I think you're off mark now.
Right.
Potentially younger.
Okay.
Because I didn't know how. I think I spent a lot of time being insular.
Yeah.
And I never fit in. I never felt like I fit in at school. That was part of the whole eating thing.
Yeah.
And controlling what I could control. So I never felt like I fit very well. It's only in my 30s that I feel like I found my groove, which is why I think externally everyone's like, oh, you got your shit together. Like Melissa looks like she knows what she's doing. It feels, and maybe this is why I'm enjoying life at the minute, it feels very recent in the last 5-6 years that I found my place in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel? Because I know this is the Purpose-Led Leadership podcast, and I always say that purpose for me evolves. It's not just one thing. It can move and shake and change. But when you start finding a form of your purpose, things start to happen. I
feel like I use the word transformation very deliberately because I do feel I've transformed entirely in 2 ways. One from the eating disorder person and one from the post-children loss of identity person.
Yeah.
And right now how I feel is very aligned. I mean, aligned is used so much and overused, but finding your thing, and this is why I'm very passionate about helping other people do it.
Yeah.
It affects every part of your being. How I dress, how I show up, how I speak.
Yeah.
I never used to look people in the eye.
Yeah.
Like now I'm so confident in who I am. I think that then has a ripple effect on everything else. But you can't pretend. There comes a point where you've got to stop pretending to be the thing that you think you should be.
It goes back to your lesson about even you know you can do a certain thing doesn't mean you have to do that. And I think so many people in this world, 80-90% of the people in the world, I think, are going through the motions. They're doing the stuff that they think they should do, but actually they're functioning. But there's no fulfillment and meaning and joy. And it's very sad. Really.
Honestly, the whole of my 20s, my very first coaching business was called The Restless Mom, because restless was my word. Like my 20s, I was restless. I was searching. I was literally searching for my thing, my place in the world, the reason for my existence.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds really lofty, but that was the thing that I was just kept going. I was looking. And in my 30s, since doing this, I'm really going into, I did a lot of internal work trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
Since that has then materialized, I feel settled.
Yeah.
I'm not searching anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just,
what a feeling, right?
I'm just being.
Do you not find that when you find that, like even things like the trees and the wind and the grass and the simple things are just, you're grateful for those.
I'm super present now. And not all the time, don't get me wrong. We have our crappy days.
Yeah, of course.
But like, I do feel very present. And I remember I used to sit on the bus. I used to get the bus when I was like 19, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I used to remember sitting on the bus and saying, one day I'm going to sit on this bus and just be able to enjoy the bus.
Yeah.
And look out the window and enjoy what's out the window. And I remember it so clearly. And actually, at the time, it was because all I was doing was analysing, thinking, stressing, counting calories, worrying about the next meal.
Yeah.
Like, I was obsessive with everything else but being there, present in the moment. So when you get to that place, I think it's just such a comfort to think this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that now.
So are you spiritual or religious in any way? Have you done anything in that area?
No, I always like to say I'm spiritual in the fact that I believe there's something looking after me or whatever. But I don't necessarily believe I need to be in a physical location to worship or anything like that. I'm not religious in that way. Okay. But I believe there's something.
I agree. So we're kind of coming towards the end. When you die at the age of 124, whatever it is.
That sounds good. I'll take that. Triple figures. Yeah.
What do you want people to remember you for?
Oh my God. I would like to think that I made an impact. And I think that is more on people.
Yeah.
Versus she built the biggest Browns or anything like that.
I love that.
I really want people, like, I'd like to have a full house at my funeral. Right. I'd like it to be standing room only because those people came because they care.
Yeah.
That for me is like my version of success. Mm-hmm. And if I do it for free in the fact that I genuinely give my time and help because I love to see people light up. And that's why it's a real blend with what I do with brand strategy and coaching and like people. Yes. It really is a powerful blend. And I think that's what really sets us apart and Ember apart, because I don't believe you can distinguish a brand from the founding team or, even if it's a massive business, you've still got people at the lead.
Absolutely.
They are one and the same. So for me, it's definitely around impact. That's my purpose. And I think it's purpose when it's not about profit.
I love that. On the coaching front, what makes a good coach, do you think?
Reading between the lines. So everyone always says, it's good listening. It is, but it's hearing what is not said and reading what is not spoken. So I think that's where the deep understanding of people comes, because you can read the silences, you can see dynamics between people. And yes, you can get taught that on a coaching course, but sometimes I think it's just innate. And I like to think that I see people and make them feel heard and understood and valued as well.
So I've had some of your services for my brand, and it was really helpful. It was like an initial discussion, wasn't it? And I really kind of understood some of the things you did and you do, and it's a real eye opener actually for those that don't necessarily kind of understand the complexity of what you do. And it's difficult to summarize, but in 3 or 4 sentences, what value do you add?
Well, a lot of it is around internal clarity. So depending whether you're a solopreneur or you've got a team, it's actually just answering those big questions at the very beginning of who are you? Why do you exist? Why should anybody else care? It's a very, very noisy, competitive world out there. So at the end of the day, if you can't answer those questions, it's going to be really, really hard for anybody else too. And at the end of the day, you have to stand out. It's a non-negotiable now. Differentiation is a non-negotiable part of business. So what is that going to be? So a lot of what we do is unlocking that. It's layering who you are as a founder or founding team or leadership team with the market, the gaps, the opportunities, all of that kind of stuff. We pair it, we kind of position it together. So like I said, the business doesn't exist without the leadership team, but you've also got to understand the wider picture as well. So we do a lot of seeking to understand, getting clarity. Once you get the clarity, you then build connection with your audience. So brand is all about hearts and minds. It's all about emotion. So how do you make people feel something? How do you make people really sit up and pay attention is how we say it. Because at the end of the day, if they're just reading facts and figures or a website, no one cares. Really, no one cares. You've got to make people feel. And the way you do that is by tapping into the psychology of the person. So it really is starting to understand who you are as a person, who your clients are, your customers are, and then making sense of the world externally.
Because I think what people do sometimes is, let's go and get the website sorted out first. That will do it kind of thing, isn't it? It's completely different thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we do all of that as well. So we do the visual identity, the fonts, the colours, the logos, the websites, the content, everything.
Yeah.
But that's irrelevant if you haven't got a really solid foundation, because actually if you just go and write a website, what are you writing?
But also an identity I think is important as well, and identifying what that is. Exactly.
Like you need to know what you're writing and also why you're writing it.
Yeah.
And that key thing I always say is, why should anybody care? And it sounds really simple, but actually 9 times out of 10 people say the same thing as everybody else. So it's about unlocking what makes you different, what makes you super special. And then you go on to, okay, how do we then bring that to life?
Yeah.
So internal brand strategy foundation, and then you start to look at your visual identity, your website and everything else. But it's very much a process. You have to start from A, go all the way through to Z. Like you have to do it that way. If you do it the other way, which is what a lot of people do, you will probably be redoing it again in a couple of years. So we tend to talk about branding for long-term sustainability, like building legacy brands that basically will last.
What does the future look like for you then?
Oh my God, do you know what? I was talking about it in the taxi ride here. I cannot predict it.
No.
What I know is I'm in my thing. I'm going to be doing this for the long term. I love in person. So I want to do a lot more in person speaking. I love teaching. So brand strategy is not this like secret that we keep here. Like I love sharing the knowledge and teaching people and seeing everyone else. You know, that light bulb moment, you're like, oh my God, yeah, I get it. It's that impact. I love that. And hopefully from a business point of view, we just keep doing really powerful work, growing brands, building that consistency, and again, being known for it.
Amazing. So last couple of questions. Got to change tack a little bit. I asked you what scares you. What? Just remind us what does scare you, but also what scarred you the most as well.
What scares me? Do you know what scares me? Getting to the end of my life and having regrets.
Right.
One thing I always do, providing it's legal and safe, I say yes.
I love that.
I say yes to opportunities, to climbing Kilimanjaro, to just doing random stuff. And I say yes. And that's a really big thing for me, because there was many years I said no for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So I say yes because I don't want to get to the point where I ever regret. I'd rather regret the things I didn't do. It's kind of you know what I mean?
Sooner regret something I've done than I haven't done.
That's what I mean. I'd much rather do that.
Absolutely agree.
That's kind of a fear, but actually I'm working on not having that. I'm scared of anything happening to my family. Like I'm really lucky, touch wood. I've not really had major illnesses or anything like that. So because I'm a family person, I think that is like a real fear. But so far so good. So, provided that's all goes well.
Yeah.
What was the other question?
What's scarred you the most so far in your life?
I mean, there's probably a lot of things, but I think I'm quite anti. Well, there's a few things. One, I'm anti-education in the fact that everyone should work really hard and do all of that. But I was that hardworking straight A student, 5 A's at A level, like 12 GCSEs, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And actually it guided me down the wrong path. So I think I'm very cautious when it comes to, again, doing what you should. I'm like actually lean into what you are strong at.
Yes, I agree.
Scarred me. And then I think when it just comes to the anorexia, for me, it was, I can be too relaxed now because I don't measure things now. So like you will never see me with an Apple Watch, or you will never see me step count, or when I used to have a personal trainer, I would never count calories or anything. Like I don't measure stuff because I know I think I'm fine. I don't think it'd ever be a problem, but there's never a part of me that would ever want to go down that route.
Metrics that you.
So I don't measure things for that reason. I think that's
great.
Potentially too, well, it is and it isn't, because some things need to get measured, right? So what gets measured?
14 glasses of wine this morning. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's pros and cons to that, but I think that's a protection thing. Like I'm so anti going back there ever, that I can be a little bit too relaxed. But
that's good.
I'd rather be too relaxed than the other way.
I'm going to squeeze in a couple more questions before the end. So I always do this at the end. What's one thing we don't know about you?
Do you know what instantly came to mind? This is not the answer you want. I was a cheerleader. There you go.
God. Really, that's quite cool.
There you go. What else? Oh my God, I did so much musical theatre. I used to sing I've grade 7 singing exams.
That doesn't surprise me.
I used to sing solos in front of thousands of people. Yeah, I did loads of up until 18.
Oh, actually, you were singing down the mountain, weren't you? So,
my God, the best day ever. Because that, again, that is that joy and freedom piece.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think we need to do so much more of is go back to who we were as kids. Like, what was the thing you used to do that brought you joy as a child? And for me, it was singing. I'm not any good at it. If anything, I'm really, really not great. But it brought me a lot of joy. So we need to do more of that.
From just on the Killy point, I don't think we can ever talk about it enough. And you kind of had to be there, really, didn't you?
You had to be there, and I could not talk about it enough. I could talk about it for days.
What's the biggest thing you got from it?
It was, and I do not say this lightly, life-changing. I came back and I felt like I'd come back from, I don't know, some war zone or something, in the fact that it shook me to my core.
Yeah.
And it is really difficult to explain, but for me, it was so refreshing to be part of a team of 26 people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and to just feel accepted. I was able to step up as my most authentic self. And what I mean by that is when you strip away makeup, clothes, job titles, social media, you are all just, you don't shower for 7 days. You are at the bare bones of who you are. You really see who your character is and the characters of others. And actually, for me, it was amazing because I realized actually I'm more of a leader than I thought. I really liked the fact that I recognized in myself, should I say, that I had more leadership qualities than I imagined. But also just seeing humanity at its best. And what I mean by that is we were there with a charity and hearing stories of what people are doing for that charity without any benefit to themselves. Yeah. Mind-blowing. Yeah. We saw hundreds of porters there who were climbing up this mountain in flip-flops and Crocs and no kit whatsoever, but yet they were singing and they were happy and they were carrying all of our tents and stuff. Yeah. Having that level of joy without any of this, modern world trappings. I think I've come back and I will not now settle for anything less than joy and happiness. And I think there are times where we do. We do settle. We accept routine, we accept normality, whatever that means to us. And I think now I've come away and actually I realise, no, I don't want to settle for anything less than joy, because these people don't, and they don't have anything. So yeah, it's quite moving when you see that.
I love that. That's a really powerful way to end the podcast. I'm going to ask one more question. I was toying with myself. If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
That my children are always healthy. Number 1.
Yeah.
That I continue to find joy in what I do. And if I don't, I move or do something else.
Yeah.
But I continue to find joy. Like, I feel like I'm at this place in my life where I'm chasing that. Like, that's really important to me, just to enjoy the thing I do.
Mm-hmm.
For 3, to have a personal stylist. Throw that one in at the end.
To have a personal stylist?
Yes, I would love a personal stylist.
You don't need one, God's sake.
My latest obsession is Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on Netflix.
All right,
so I'm slightly into the transformations at the minute.
There we go.
That's a fun one to finish on. There you go.
Absolutely. An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.